Welcome to the Trevor Meyer Show. I'm Trevor Meyer, and today we're going to talk about what it would look like if you made a Terminator movie for $70 million. I'm in my new recording studio. The other ones were getting a little bit ridiculous. I was still using the iPhone. I've been using the iPhone for years now, and I used to have a pretty cool background. Then it got a little bit worse, and then the last video I did, it was just a white room, and I was like, no more. No more! So, I'm just hiding in the back room here. This is what took me so long to post another video, among other things. But I got the old microphone from the old audio days before I showed my face. I got headphones. I got my Marvel poster hanging up. I got a new lighting kit, a very professional, expensive lighting kit. I don't know if you can tell. It's right there. That's that right there. It's Menards. What was it, like $5? I don't know. Still a work in progress. What's really going to be interesting is right in front of me is a window. And I can't do anything about the lighting out there. So reshoots are going to be interesting because the lighting is going to be very inconsistent on my face because of what's out there. So it's daytime now. It might be nighttime later. I'm hoping that's going to do its job, but I should put a mirror in front of me and then it'll front light me too. So, why 70 million? Why did I go to 70 million for a Terminator movie? Honestly, I don't know. I can't remember. A year ago, I did an Excel spreadsheet that predicted how much money each Terminator movie was going to make based on the performance of the previous Terminator movies. Somehow I figured out that the next one after Dark Fate would make about 210 million at least, and that in order to have a healthy profit margin, you needed to have the budget be 1/3 of that, and I got to 70 million. I really wish I remembered what formula I used to figure that out, because once I got the number, I was like, great, that's all I needed to know. And it's like, forget showing my work and how I got there. But somehow I'd figured out that the ideal budget for the next Terminator movie would be $70 million because movies are too expensive. A few years ago, I saw Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan in a local movie theater, and at the beginning, they had this interview with William Shatner, and he was talking about how the way that they were able to continue the franchise was to slash the budget, basically. I think they did Wrath of Khan for like a quarter of the budget of the motion picture, and it wound up being arguably the best Star Trek movie ever made, you know? So right around then I was thinking, that's interesting. Maybe we should just start making movies for less money. So if you're going to make a Terminator movie, for example, maybe go lower budget than they have been, because half of them, if you account for the marketing budget, if you account for marketing, every Terminator movie after T2 has flopped at the box office. If you don't account for marketing and you just hope that home video will take care of that in the long run, then half of the franchise flops. 1 and 2 and 3. I guess only 2 of them really flopped hard. And that was Terminator Salvation and Terminator Dark Fate. So, this was before Dark Fate came out. I was like, maybe we should go lower budget, because Genesis just barely squeezed out a profit and did not profit if you count marketing. So I thought maybe the answer is to start pulling it back a little bit, going a little bit more modest with the budget. So then when James Cameron came around and he became the producer of Terminator Dark Fate, and they announced that the budget was going to be $185 million, like on par with a Marvel movie, I was like, oh, interesting. Well, if James Cameron thinks so, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe spending less is not the answer. Maybe you gotta spend money to make money. I mean, James Cameron would know. He made Titanic, he made Avatar, he made Terminator 2, and spent loads of money. I think he, at one time or another, made the most expensive movie ever made, and it wound up being one of the highest grossing movies of all time. So, if this is a guy who can make the highest grossing movie of all time, Titanic, and then top himself with Avatar and beat his own record and become the number one highest grossing movie again, So he has the top 2 slots because he beat his own record. This is before Endgame, but then Avatar took it back, and then Endgame will take it back. So they'll just be doing that for a while. But I thought, okay, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's counterintuitive. Maybe he knows what he's talking about. No, I was right. Spending $185 million on a Terminator franchise that is dying is stupid. Terminator Dark Fate, again, flopped at the box office. This is a franchise where spending a lot of money is not going to solve your problem. All right? So, you might wonder, though, if we got to go low budget with this, if we got to spend $70 million on a Terminator movie, we can keep the franchise alive and keep them going for longer. But is that really what we want? Do we really want to go the low budget route? Is that going to make it worth it? Or should we just, if you can't have the explosions and stuff blowing up, then what's the point? And I was really worried about that. But the good news is I've done some digging. And as it turns out, you can actually do a lot with $70 million because we got to go back to the roots. We got to go back to where it all started because if you say you can't make a Terminator movie for less than $100 million or $200 million or $300 million, the first one, $6.4 million. 6.4. Now, you might say, well, yeah, but that was 1984. Things are different now. Your money just doesn't go as far these days. That's true. But even if you adjust for inflation, it's maybe triple that, which would put you at about 19.2. I think really it's probably closer to 17. But that's still tiny by today's standards. So, yeah, I think we got to get a little bit more scrappy. I think we got to get a little bit more resourceful. I think we got to stop throwing money at the problem and start being a little bit more creative. So, I was inspired by a couple of newer movies that had come out. We'll get to those in a second. But movies that had a surprising amount of action and visual effects, but I was like, wow, you made this for less than $100 million. That's incredible. So it is possible. I think that it could even be good and look good and not feel like some cheap sci-fi original movie. All right. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go off a list of 10 movies, 5 of which have a budget that is under $70 million and 5 of which that have a budget that is over $70 million. I can do this now. I'm not using an iPhone. That's amazing. I can use both hands. I can do air quotes now. Real air quotes. And what we're going to do, it's going to be kind of weird because I'm going to start low and then go high and then work our way through the list toward the middle, towards 70 million, and kind of zero in on what this movie would look like. So some of these are going to be too high, some of them are going to be too low, but we're going to meet in the middle and see what this movie would look like. So, first on the list, The Terminator. The Terminator, all right? The Terminator, as we discussed, was made for $6.4 million, and then if you adjust for inflation, okay, real quick disclaimer here about my numbers. Very loose estimates, because I don't have an insight into every aspect of the film industry. I don't know what they're charging for visual effects. I don't know what they're charging for actors as opposed to what they were doing back in the 80s. This is, one, based mainly on the inflation of ticket sales, which, again, maybe there's a correlation there. I don't know. Ideally, the amount they're spending on movies would correlate to the amount they're charging for people watching their movies, but I don't know for sure if that's true. But it is based on ticket prices, the inflation. Also, I'm using whole number multipliers, so I'm either leaving it alone or doubling it or tripling it, and that's it. So, really, if you wanted a real accurate number, you would say times 1.43 or something like that, or times 2.17. But I'm just going to say double it, triple it, and we're using like really rough numbers here. But, we're not the accountants working for Paramount right now, so it doesn't have to be, 100% accurate. But just to give you a general idea of what these things look like. So, yeah, Terminator, it's from 1984, triple at $19.2 million. And that's way lower than what we're talking about. 19.2 is still way lower than 70 million by today's standards. And What does that mean? Like comparing it to like something like Dark Fate. Probably not having airplanes crash into each other, CGI characters fighting each other in midair, wire work, slow motion, Humvees falling from the sky, you know. Probably gonna have to dial back the visual effects a little bit, you know. Because if you watch, say, Dark Fate side by side with the Terminator, a couple of things you notice. One, they didn't use any green screen in the Terminator. Maybe for the stop motion animation part at the end, but I'm not sure. They didn't use any green screen. They didn't use any wire work. You know, when a Terminator threw a guy, he just fell over. All right, he just pushed a guy over. He didn't go flying 30 feet in the air and crash through a brick wall. You know, this was like, if I gave you a camera right now and you had to go shoot a Terminator movie, what would it look like? Yeah, you have a couple of shots of his arm opened up and his robotic eye showing, but he puts on sunglasses and I guess he didn't even need gloves, but he put on a jacket to cover that up. So you do a couple of shots to sell it, and then you're done. Then you just shoot an action movie. All right? So that's what we got to do. We got to stop trying to compete with the Avengers. Every movie franchise feels like they got to compete with the Avengers now. No. Go smaller, for God's sake. Because not every movie is going to make Avengers money. So now let's go on the opposite end of the spectrum. Let's go to the top of the list, to something that's way too expensive. Way too expensive for a Terminator movie, but still cheaper if you adjust for inflation than Terminator Dark Fate, Terminator Salvation, Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines probably, and Terminator 2. I think Terminator Genesis is the only one that is under this, besides the original. Captain America the Winter Soldier. Meh. Now, I know I just had a rant about Marvel movies. Let's stop trying to compete with Marvel movies. But, man, they're spending more than they did on Captain America the Winter Soldier. Captain America the Winter Soldier cost $174 million. That's more than double the budget we're looking for, but not more than triple. So it's more like 2 or 3 times more than what we're looking at. But there are certain elements of it that I could see working in a Terminator movie, like the Winter Soldier himself. He's got a big metal arm. Now, maybe you wouldn't do that. Because it costs money to render that in visual effects shots. You know, they kind of let these Marvel movies off the chain. It's like, you need a guy with a metal arm? Here you go. You need helicarriers? There you go. But if you had to handcuff them and limit their resources, you didn't need that. You didn't need to do a digital arm. Some of the shots, it might even be real. I don't know. I think it's probably they shot it with a real arm and then overlaid it with a CGI arm, because I think that's what they did with Black Panther's suit. Bucky Barnes is basically a Terminator in that movie anyway. And you got the car chases. There's this one shot where Strike is coming into a bunker that they just exploded, and you see the helicarriers flying through the air above them, and they're marching down, climbing into the rubble, and they got these rifles. And I'm like, God, this looks exactly like the future war from Terminator 2. All right, so if they were doing like a big budget one, I would say put the Russo brothers in charge of it and do it like Winter Soldier. But there's a lot of stuff in there that they could use. But again, you got to scale it back a bit because they don't have that kind of money. Now let's go with the number 2, lowball. You know, working our way up towards 70. John Wick Chapter 2. Now, why Chapter 2? Well, Chapter 3 I think was over 70, and John Wick, again, that's a great movie too, but that would be short selling it a little bit because I think they made that for way less than the second one. But even the second one is 40. So we could do almost double that for a Terminator movie, all right? They made it for 40. And they did international travel in that movie. They have him, being attacked by assassins nonstop throughout the whole thing. He's on the run. He's being chased. It's like a Mission Impossible movie. It's like a James Bond movie, but they made it for $40 million. They did practical stunts, practical effects, practical car chases. This is what we're really going to start zeroing in on, is this idea of basically shooting movies a little bit more old-fashioned and doing things for real instead of using a lot of CGI, because it's the visual effects that get really expensive in these movies. But if you can do it for real, again, the first movie is basically like a John Wick movie. You just have a couple of scenes where you sell the idea that he's not human. All right? So if they had a couple of shots in John Wick Chapter 2 where like he's patching himself up and you see that he's actually a cyborg, that would do it. Then it's a Terminator movie. Easy. You know, and even like the overlay when we see it from Terminator's point of view, you can do that as a Snapchat filter. I mean, come on. Like you just take the image and then put a filter over it and done. It's pretty basic. If they can do it for the first Terminator, they can do it for a new one with little effort. All right, now going with the second highball, coming down from Captain America: The Winter Soldier, Terminator Genesis. Now, again, I just complained that Terminator Genesis spent too much money, but it was relatively conservative compared to the other Terminator sequels that they made. All right? It cost less than Salvation, less than Dark Fate, and if you adjust for inflation, I think it cost less than Terminator 2 and Terminator 3. So they kept it pretty modest, It's probably the second cheapest after the first one, but still too high. They spent $156 million on that movie, which, again, is a little over double what we want to do. So what would you change? What would you change about that to make it more reasonable? Well, less time travel, less CGI, less future stuff, honestly. Like, that whole future time travel sequence is really cool, and it was in the script for Terminator 2, and James Cameron cut it out because it would be too expensive. That's why it's not in the movie. They cut it out of Terminator 2 where John Connor sends the Terminator back because it was too expensive. So they show that in Genesis, and guess what? It was expensive. The Future War stuff was expensive. All the, showing up in the middle of a highway, another helicopter chase, blowing up a whole freaking building again. I think all these Terminator sequels are trying to go back to recapture Terminator 2. I think they should be going back a little bit further than that. I think they should be trying to recapture what worked for Terminator 1. All right? Terminator 1 was basically a slasher movie. All right? It was Halloween with a robot. So I think that we need to get a little bit more gritty, a little bit more down to earth, and less of the sleek special effects and all that stuff they got going on there, because you got T1000s and you got T5000s, you got T3000s and you got T800s and you got HKs and spider walkers and all kinds of crap in Terminator Genesis, and like most of that you gotta get rid of it. You gotta strip it down. Not a bad concept to bring it back to the present day, but again, you gotta rein it in a little bit. Focus on good storytelling instead of good special effects. All right, and for the third lowball, we are going with. I almost don't even want to say it. This is a good place to put a disclaimer that I'm not accounting for the quality of these movies, only for what they could accomplish with the budgets they had. So I'm going there. Aliens versus Predator Requiem. I know. Aliens versus Predator Requiem. Here's why I put this on the list, though. It cost $40 million. 40. All right? That's about half of the 70 that we're shooting for. And you had aliens, you had a predator, and you had a predalien. Predalien? Yeah, right. And you had them fighting each other in the modern day among regular people. And that's the key, So you got a predator in the woods hunting people and killing people, or killing aliens, I guess, but he also killed like a hunter. I forget what it is. I saw the movie, but not in a while. But something like that in a Terminator movie would require much less special effects, because he looks human for most of it, You don't even have to put a guy in a suit. Like, you can have two regular-looking people fight each other, and they'd be Terminators. And you just gotta, every once in a while, show that they are not human. So, if they can pull off something like this, aliens and predators and predaliens fighting each other in the suburbs for $40 million, you could do a Terminator movie for $70. No problem. All right, now the third highball would be the Bourne Identity. Again, kind of similar to Captain America the Winter Soldier. In fact, that's kind of the angle they took with the modern Captain Americas, is that they made him into Jason Bourne, basically, which worked great. So, but you go back to the first Bourne Identity, it cost $60 million, but adjust for inflation. It is kind of old. I think it's from like 2003, 2002. So by now, 2021, closer to double than what it was. So I'd say it's closer to 120 in today's dollars than it is to 60. But, you know, somewhere in there, 60 to 120. But again, you got deadly assassins hunting another deadly assassin, and he's got somebody who's taking him in a car across the country while he avoids all these people who are trying to kill him. So again, it's the same movie. You just, you know, so if you say that Matt Damon is a protector character from the future, and that Marie is the target that he has to protect, and that there are these Terminators coming after him, again, it's, now this is too high, so you got to dial it back a little bit, probably have less action, less of the government stuff, and maybe, I don't know if you shoot on location or not, but maybe have fewer assassins coming after them so that you can afford to show the visual effects shots that establish that they are robots. Also, there's some scenes on a boat, and that, I don't know, just cut that out. You know, that seems expensive. I wouldn't want to shoot on a boat. Kidding me? And the fourth lowball movie would be Predator 2. I know we just did a Predator movie, but this one is even closer to what I think a Terminator movie would be, because it's in a city, not the suburbs. There's just one predator for most of it, and he is hunting multiple targets. And you have this cop, you know, in the first Terminator movie was kind of a cop movie, so you got Danny Glover from Lethal Weapon hunting down a predator. So, again, not accounting for the quality of these movies, but the kind of setting that it would be, and the kind of action you would have to have, and still bigger than Terminator 1, because I think this one cost $25 million, which, if you adjust for inflation, would be closer to $50 million. I think Predator 2 is a good place to look for a science fiction creature hunting targets in a big city, and having a human protector, or a humanoid, you know, somebody who looks human protector chasing after the thing. And for the fourth highball movie, Deadpool 2. Deadpool 2. Now, again, you might say, why not Deadpool 1? Well, for one thing, that's not a high ball. That'd actually be a low ball. I think that's under 70. I think they made it for like 58 million. And if you look at the second one, this is the one where you have time travel. You have a cyborg main character who basically looks like a Terminator. And by the way, Josh Brolin was originally going to play Marcus Wright in Terminator Salvation before they cast Sam Worthington. Or at least they had Josh Brolin in mind when they wrote it. I think that was the plan. And then it's funny to watch him go off and play Cable, which is basically a Terminator. So, but you got time travel, you got the future stuff, you got Cyborg. Now, what you'd probably have to do to get it down from 110 to 70 is to, you know, probably get a little bit closer to the first Deadpool, as in not as many car chases, not as much CGI, not as much of that X-Force stuff. You know, strip it down, make it simple, but I did include it because of the cyborg character and the future time travel stuff. And the final lowball movie is very recent, just came out, Mortal Kombat 2021. Now, why this one? Why Mortal Kombat? Because that's a fighting video game movie. It's not like a running and chasing and time travel type movie. Well, isn't it though? Because you've got a lot of visual effects in Mortal Kombat. You've got somebody with robot arms. You got somebody who shoots a laser out of his eyes. And Sub-Zero in that movie is basically a Terminator. Sub-Zero shows up, kills some people, and then leaves. He shows up, kills some people, and then leaves. Sonya and Jax are basically like protector characters. I mean, it is very much like a Terminator movie if you've seen this. Like, Mortal Kombat is basically a Terminator movie. And I picked that one because, yeah, they can't show a lot of Outworld, which is basically like the future war. You know, it's another place where they can go that the characters come from to our world, because it's cheaper to shoot here than it is to shoot in the future or in another realm. But I was really impressed that This movie was made for $55 million, $55 million, and still had visual effects that look just as good as a Marvel movie, even if it doesn't have the scope of a Marvel movie. So again, strip it down, make it look a little bit more like the first one, but you can go bigger than the first Terminator because you've got characters who are shooting ice, characters who are shooting fire, you got characters with bionic arms and shooting lasers. So, yeah, that I think that's actually a surprisingly good analogy to the Terminator movies that we're talking about here. And the last highball movie. Again, this might seem a little bit weird, or not, if you're big into, throwbacks to 90s action movies. Bad Boys for Life. Now, this is not a Bad Boys review, but I am kind of on a kick now because I just saw Bad Boys for Life, and I went back and watched the first one and then saw the second one for the first time because I never bothered to try that one out. And then I watched the third one again. And what was funny, and this was what originally inspired me to start, one, watching the Bad Boys movies, and two, to actually make this video, because I was like, whoa, hold up. You made Bad Boys for Life for $90 million? Now the one before that, in 2003, cost $130 million. $130 million. That was 17 years ago. 18 years ago now, but 17 years before Bad Boys for Life. And they cut the budget from $130 million to $90. And how did they do that? Well, they had enough money to afford Will Smith or Michael Bay, and they couldn't do both, so they picked Will Smith because he's on the poster. He is one of the titular Bad Boys characters. And they hired a couple of kind of low-budget indie foreign filmmakers who had never made a big-budget movie like this before, and they crushed it. They made a good movie. Well, let me rephrase that. They made a movie better than the other two Bad Boys movies. It's better. They made the best Bad Boys movie so far. How about that? But what else? Aside from firing the, Mr. Transformers and bringing in some indie directors who have a new take on the material and cost less, what else did they do? Because I couldn't let this go. I'm like, how? Because I saw the movie and I'm like, this is like wall-to-wall action. You got characters being assassinated left and right. That's the other thing, too, is that the main henchman in the movie is a Terminator. All right? His whole deal is that throughout the movie, he's going around killing people. He's assassinating people with a sniper rifle or with, an Uzi or whatever. And he's got, mad martial arts skills, too. He's jumping on cars and riding motorcycles. He's a Terminator. Come on. So, and you can get Will Smith to star in this movie and, keep it to $90 million. That's pretty impressive just by itself. But they said the main key was basically they did everything practically. They did some CGI because, modern technology and all that. But they tried to shoot it as much practically as possible. They did real car chases, real fight scenes, and they shot it like a throwback to 90s action movies. I think that's what we're really zeroing in on here, is that we need to pretend that all this cool stuff that we've invented in the last 30 years or so doesn't exist. We got to pretend that Gollum never happened. We got to pretend that, the age reduction technology they use in all the Marvel movies to show them at their younger selves doesn't exist anymore. Because that's the kind of stuff that you get in Dark Fate when you can, or in... Hell, they've been replacing Arnold's face in every movie for, the last 3 Terminator movies. They did it in Salvation. They had a CGI Arnold face. And in Genesis, he fought that CGI Arnold. The real Arnold fought the CGI Arnold. And then in the last one, at the beginning of the movie, we got another CGI Arnold face. You got to pretend you can't do that. I didn't think I was going to say this here. I was going to save this one for another future rant. But for God's sake, just hire John Cena. Just have John Cena play young Arnold Schwarzenegger. Are you insane? You think we're not going to get it? Teach him how to speak with an Austrian accent. Do you think we're going to be confused when John Cena shows up in the 90s and, spoiler alert, kills John Connor? Do you think we're going to be confused when, in 2020, he's Arnold Schwarzenegger? Or do you think we're going to piece that together? Wouldn't it have been really cool if in Terminator Genesis, they recast everybody else? In Terminator Genesis, they recast Kyle Reese with a guy who looks nothing like him. They recast Sarah Connor. They recast the street punks that Arnold fights. But we had to do a CGI Arnold. Can you imagine how much cheaper and more amazing it would have been if they had just had John Cena show up and go up to the street punks and read his lines, read the Terminator's lines from the first movie, and we're not going to be like, hey, that's not Arnold Schwarzenegger. What's going on around here? No, come on. You think we're going to not figure that out? How cool would it have been to have a former bodybuilder, Mr. Universe, fighting a WWE superstar for the beginning of Terminator Genesis? For God's sake. Why? Why are we relying on this CGI and age reduction technology and, motion capture and all that stuff when you could just cast a different actor who would do just as well and it would look better and it'd be cooler, honestly, from a pop culture standpoint? Then you get to sell the movie on John Cena fighting Arnold Schwarzenegger. Come on, man. I didn't think I was going to go there. But come on. How have you not figured this out yet? And yeah, screw it. I'm going to tell you right now. If I do another Terminator video, I'm going to have John Cena play the Terminator. Of course. It's my movie. I can do whatever I want. I don't spend any money. It's all in here. It's all in my head. So that's it. That's all I got to say, is that it's possible to make a really good, action-packed, visual effects heavy movie on a modest budget and keep these franchises alive, because too many good franchises are ending because they're spending too much goddamn money. We could have more Star Trek movies. We could have more Terminator movies. We could have more Alien movies. We could have more Predator movies. Like, we keep this going on forever if they would just make the movies on a reasonable budget so they could keep turning a profit. But no, they spend a bunch of money and then it flops at the box office because it was too expensive to make. And especially with franchises that were born in the 80s, all right? 70s, 80s. People these days don't care so much about that. You see a Fast and Furious movie trailer, that's going to do $1 billion when it comes out in theaters. In a normal world, before 2020. Because that's the modern pop culture phenomenon. So you put a Terminator thing on the title, and at this point it might be more of a liability than an asset, because who cares about Terminator now? People who watched it back in the 90s? Yeah. But one of the biggest mistakes they made was keeping the franchise focused on Arnold Schwarzenegger, because that's not true to the spirit of Terminator. It's like the letter of the law versus the spirit of the law. Yes, Arnold Schwarzenegger literally starred in Terminator 2, and he was one of the biggest action stars of the 90s, 80s, and 90s. So, yeah, Terminator 2 brought in a whole bunch of money once he was an action star. So, the answer is not bring back Arnold Schwarzenegger. The answer is, who is today's modern action hero? Who is today's Arnold Schwarzenegger? And the answer is, of course, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. But here's the thing. I would never, ever, ever put him in a Terminator movie. I wouldn't have him be the hero, because it'd be cheesy as hell. And I wouldn't have him be the Terminator, because he's got too big of a personality to just play a robot. Alright? He's just got too much charm, too much swagger to be a Terminator. So, who could play a Terminator, though? And I don't mean this as an insult. If anything, I'm saying, you don't want to ask The Rock to play down. You don't want him to limit his performance because of how big he is, personality and, But someone like John Cena, who actually is a pretty good actor, like if you've seen him in Bumblebee and other things like that, he's actually really funny. He's actually got a really natural, funny way of being. But if you needed to strip that down and turn him into a Terminator, where he just he'd still be funny. He'd still be hilarious, and he would be really good at that. And he looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger. So yeah, that's all. That's it. That's my rant. I want these franchises to stay alive and keep making money. And I'm sure that's what the studios want too. They want reliable sources of income for their company, right? So what else do I got going on? Still writing my novels. Still trying to get onto this channel and make more YouTube videos. Now, I understand it's upsetting that... It's upsetting to me, and it's upsetting to all of you, I'm sure, that I only made 2 videos last year. 2. I made 2 videos in 2020. Granted, there was a lot of stuff going on in 2020, but I do want to get better about that, and I want to start having these come out on a regular basis. So when I first started the channel, or like when I first started showing my face, when I first started the Trevor Meyer Show instead of Good Screenwriting, I was doing a video every week, I think, and those videos nobody watched. There was movie reviews and things like that. That are like the lowest viewed videos on my channel. Then I started doing like really long, more elaborate ones that were basically fan fiction rewrites of popular Hollywood movies. And those got lots of views, lots of people subscribing. But I can't do that every time because it takes a really long time to come up with a full story treatment for a new movie script, basically. So what I want to do is do more videos like this, other subjects related to movies and writing and things like that, and maybe do 1 or 2 big 2-hour rewrites a year, but just have other stuff too. So I'm going to try to just make smaller videos like this, and then every once in a while do a big rewrite, and then we'll get, more traction on this channel, I think. So if you want more stuff like this, please hit that subscribe button down there. And if you've already subscribed, send it to other people, share it with your friends who think that this would be interesting, and get them to subscribe as well. Like and comment. I respond to every comment. So far, I've been able to respond to every comment. Some of them slip through the cracks, some of the really old ones, but I'm trying to respond to every comment. Again, like maybe about once a month, I go through all the comments and make sure I respond. But I'm trying to engage and keep an open dialogue here, because it's not just a one-way street of me talking at you, but talking with you and seeing what you think about it. And again, when my books are published, I'm going to put a link down there and let you know. And I've been working on these books for like 13 years, so I don't know when they're going to be done, but when they are, I'm going to update, the descriptions of my videos and start marketing them, because what else is this for but to market my brilliant movie ideas and book ideas. That's it for now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. But that's actually a Terminator on a motorcycle coming to kill me right now. He heard me talking.